everyone gets very obsessed about the idea of surveillance and information, and in fact there's CCTV cameras everywhere. We haven't seen the problem yet because there's no one to watch them. Okay, so all this information flies around, but unless you can understand what's going on in the information, you're still relatively safe. We're about to hit a fundamentally different situation. When you can start to understand the information and put it together, the ability to do something without it being known is going to become very, very difficult. And I'm not talking here about Big Brother. No,
you mean like do anything?
Yeah. So, and I'm not talking here about Big Brother and governments. I'm talking about any arbitrary group of people.
Who has access to the kind of software that you sell?
Well, yeah, but that means downloading an app. So, for example, you download an app on your smartphone today, and through the camera, it will read any license plate that happens to appear in front of it. Okay, that's interesting. But imagine that you're on a Facebook group, and you've got a large number of people doing that, and that information is compared between them. You can track anyone moving around the city in that situation. And that's not something which is requiring the resources of a government. So what you've got now
if you had 20 or 30 people alone, you might be able to really track a lot of vehicles.
Yeah, and because of social media, you could have groups cooperating with groups. So there's 20 people that are interested in, some politician and what they're up to. There's another 20 that are interested in something else. Now, initially when you say this, people think that's great, that's democracy, that's transparency. But what you've got to think about is how do human beings work and how do we get things done? And sometimes, actually, a little bit of deceit and a little bit of hypocrisy is really important to how human beings work. And I have to be very careful at this point not to get a quote, Mike Lynch says hypocrisy is a good thing. But let me give you an example. Northern Irish peace process. Wonderful thing that we've, relatively speaking, had peace in Northern Ireland. Now, there is no way that agreement could ever have come into being if people had known that the parties from both sides were meeting. In fact, they'd have both ended up with bullets in the back of their head. So that is something where a great deal of good has come by the fact that we didn't have transparency. So there's really two sides to this, and sometimes we get a bit obsessed with the idea that knowing everything and transparency is a good thing. But actually, to solve some of the problems in the world, you need to have the ability to get some stuff done behind the scenes.
But you don't seem to have a lot of confidence that we're going to be able to have that privacy.
No, I can't conceive of how that privacy is going to survive the ability of the machines to actually understand the data they're getting, because there are going to be sensors everywhere. We're all carrying the most incredible sophisticated devices that can see and hear and know where they are. Then you couple that with the idea of swarms of sensors, which I think is also coming. Now, the thing that saved you in the past was you could generate all this information, but unless you were really looking for something very seriously, i.e. you had the resources of a government, it wasn't a problem. Now, there's not going to be that limitation. So it's going to be a very different world.